Hey guys, so today we're going to talk a little bit about JavaScript, and not specifically just about, well, it's going to be about JavaScript, but I want to kind of address a statement I saw on one of my videos this morning. I think there was this person who had said, hey, I'm not sure where we are right now, but I started working on this. Let's build an application in all vanilla JavaScript. And there seems to be a lot of interest for that because, hey, everything is about React and Angular and Vue these days, right? Well, yes, to a point. In the industry, it's extremely popular to work with these sorts of things. But I had this request basically from a few people to build something just using vanilla JavaScript, no frameworks, no nothing. And there was this person who added this comment stating that this seems very interesting because I've always been told that it's only really possible to make small things with like vanilla JavaScript, and basically make a to-do app is the best thing you can do. And that's what I want to talk about. So let's get into that. You see, there is this idea, and it is very similar to the same thing we had with jQuery back in the day, where for some reason, I don't know why, well, I have my suspicions, but anywho, there is this group of people who start using things like jQuery, or these days it's React and Angular and so forth, and for whatever reason, they are all but certain that that's the only way to write JavaScript code. And they will hear nothing about other alternatives and so forth, because they are simply presented with this being the way that you do these sorts of things. And I think that's kind of interesting, because I want to tell you here and now that there is nothing stopping you from building an entire fairly sophisticated application in vanilla JavaScript. But the reason why you don't, and the reason why most professional grade projects do not do this, is because it's extremely hard to do. It is extremely hard. And I kind of think this is interesting as well, because it's a very, I don't know what to call it, but I think it's interesting that the complexity of doing this is actually at the point where it's so high that you're willing to use these other frameworks to kind of mitigate some of those issues. And some people simply think it's so difficult and so impossible that they just dismiss JavaScript as a language, when the fundamental problem is that, hey, you don't know how to do it. That's the problem. In my world, at least, the problem isn't JavaScript necessarily. The problem is that you don't know how to actually structure an application so that it scales to these large sizes. And of course, we can make an argument that, hey, that's the problem with JavaScript, and it's supposed to be about the language being better, or because, well, at the same time, I don't really think it's fair to say that it's the language. It's more about the actual like browser APIs and all that good stuff. But let's flip that then and say, hey, system levels programming, kernels, operating systems, stuff like that, that's super complicated. Fucking C is horrible, or C++ is horrible, and so forth, because it's so complicated, right? But we don't do that. But what the people who actually work on this do is that they learn how to not make it complicated. Because once you understand something and you truly have a good grasp of how to do it, everything is trivial. Everything is easy if you're a master of it. Hey, learning Chinese for me is it's fairly complicated, but for someone who lives in China, hey, it's, kind of easy. Same deal here. And that's what I want you to remember when people talk about JavaScript with these negative terms, because fundamentally, guys, I mean, look at, say, the React team. What is React doing that is so magical? Well, all it's doing is that what's happened is that you've had extremely experienced, really good engineers sit down and write a solution so that you don't have to. so that you can have an easier time developing your applications. But under the hood, they have created a very, very sophisticated implementation in vanilla JavaScript. Regardless of how many abstractions you put on a JSX, whatever, at the end of the day, at the bottom line is that it is still JavaScript. Under the hood, it's the same damn thing you would have done if you had written it all in vanilla JavaScript. And so, as somebody who has done this a few times, I can tell you that it's absolutely feasible to write something quite complex with all vanilla JavaScript. Now, I'm not saying that you should. See, that's the distinction I want to make here. There is, how do I put this? There are good ideas and there are bad ideas. The reason why I argue that it's a bad idea to write all of it in vanilla JavaScript, like a really, really sophisticated application, is that it raises the threshold of experience for the people who are supposed to be able to contribute to the project. I mean, if you want to do it, you can absolutely do it, and I encourage you for learning purposes to do it. Or if you can do it in a professional environment as well, or for a big project, if you have a really strong use case for it. Usually you don't. Productivity is much more important, and being able to hire people effectively, because let's just face it, guys. A really large application in of itself is so complicated that you need good people in order to maintain it, and it will get even worse if you have it. If you're either using a language that is very obscure, or you have a code base that is very, very hard to maintain, or in this case, using something like vanilla JavaScript might lead to you actually having less productivity, or having, well, let's say just quite a lot of code rot. In other words, your code base will rot and become legacy very quickly because it's that complicated to maintain. So, as I said, I'm not trying to tell you that you should write everything in vanilla JavaScript, because that's just not going to be productive. But I don't want you to be convinced that the problem is JavaScript, because it's not. It is an education problem, and it's a knowledge problem when it comes to doing that sort of development. That's the issue. The issue is not the language itself, because, as I said, under the hood, React, Angular, all these frameworks use vanilla JavaScript to do the thing, to allow you to do the thing that you're doing with those frameworks. And what I suggest, and I really believe in, is that you should make a personal investment and actually learn the browsers, like the native APIs, and understand how all these things work, so you can understand how the environment that you are working in works. Because once you understand that, it becomes, it doesn't become so magical to write things in vanilla JavaScript. It doesn't become this big burden for you. There are things that aren't nice, of course, when it comes to working in just plain old JavaScript in the browser. And you will see these things if you give it a try. But I really think that you should make a personal investment, just as I think that anybody who wants to work in software development should at least have a basic understanding of, fairly basic computer science. How does the computer actually work? How does an operating system work? How does memory allocation work? All these basic things. It's the same thing for web. I think that you should at least once try your hand at building a sophisticated JavaScript application, and so you can see how it actually works. Have a great day.